Alright, so today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man The Lost Hunt #1. This is a mini-series that an old-school writer's coming back to sort of continue on the first Amazing Spider-Man comic run that lasted like 440 issues. This is basically an addition to that storyline. From my understanding, it takes place after the Clone Saga, and this is also like a sequel to Kraven's Last Hunt, which it was the same writer that wrote that one, which is like one of the best Spider-Man stories of all time. It's incredibly depressing, but it's still considered one of the greatest stories. I like it myself, for sure. So this is sort of like a continuation to that story by the same writer. So like, of course, this is a must-have if you just enjoy the old school Spider-Man vibe. Of course, I'm going to be spoiling the story, so if you haven't read it already and you don't want me to spoil it, then probably go read the story first. Otherwise, without further ado, let's begin. So the story starts off with Peter Parker. Looks like he's just living in Oregon. He tries to leap from one building to another, but almost fails. He narrowly just like gets a grip on the edge of the second building. Honestly, almost just dies. So here you can tell he's like having a huge rush over like the fact that he even tried doing this. Cause at this point he doesn't have powers. The little intro description paragraph for the comic explained that. So that's what led me to believe this was like a sequel to the Clone Saga events. And then we move over to the bedroom where MJ is sleeping, because all this is taking place at night. MJ noticed Peter Parker sneaking through the window, and she's like questioning him like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Do you know what time it is? Why are you sneaking off like a teenager? And Peter Parker explains his insecurities to her. He doesn't feel like he can properly adjust to not having powers and living a normal life. And he confesses that it literally almost just killed him. And at this point in time, Peter Parker is hugging MJ's belly because she is pregnant at the moment with his baby. They're both expecting a baby. And this is something that I for sure experienced a lot in the comics reading the Clone Saga. For the most part, MJ's just pregnant the entire time. But in this one, it looks like she's further in that pregnancy. But he's hugging her belly and he feels a kick. And at this point, it sort of snaps him back to reality. And at this point, it really reassures him, feeling that and snapping back to reality. He realizes how stupid he was and he's never going to do something like that again. And he realizes that he's going to be a father, so that's his biggest responsibility at that moment. So he shouldn't be like jumping off buildings, trying to relive the hero days. Because of course he doesn't have powers. And this very night, Peter doesn't sleep at all. He's having a very traumatic night. That rush of him almost dying because of that leap has made a lot of memories come back over the villains that he has previously fought and have almost just ended him. So this entire night, he just doesn't get any sleep because he's up all night thinking about that kind of stuff. And then here we get the villain reveal. He's just kind of hanging out outside of his building. And there's a lot of smoke. This is kind of an indicator as to what's happening with Peter Parker right now. The very next morning, Peter Parker is still in the same exact condition, and MJ notices this. She's trying to constantly get his attention, but, he's just sitting there spacing out in his own thoughts. She gets kind of irritated by it because, of course, Peter's not talking about it. He's just sitting there ignoring her. At some point, she does come across to him, and Peter Parker wishes her off to work. And she notices how he's trying his best to pretend that he's fine, but he's clearly hiding something. She definitely notices something's off with him. And at this point, Peter Parker's just left alone in the apartment in his underwear when all of a sudden what he describes is a PTSD sort of attack. And what was keeping him up all night is happening to him that very morning. And throughout the day, he increasingly starts getting more and more depressed. And here we get occasional reveals of the villain's face, of course, showing us that he's the one behind this. MJ just notices Peter Parker's getting more and more distant, but he's not talking about anything. He's just trapped in his own depressing thoughts. And you get to see how he doesn't want these PTSD-induced events to affect his relationship. He doesn't want his past to mess with the good that he has right now. You know, he's with MJ, they have their own apartment, they have their own jobs. He teaches a school, she also teaches another school, and they're having a baby. But he's slowly going into like madness. And of course it gets revealed that the villain's behind this. He's doing some like, I don't know, jungle herb nonsense that Kraven used to use to increase his like strength and agility and whatnot. But he's using whatever, you know, abilities he has to dive into Peter Parker's mind and make him basically just go crazy. He wants to get revenge on Peter Parker the same way that drove Kraven the Hunter into suicide. This is like all out just hardcore AF. And here the villain is also just mourning the loss of Kraven, as well as Kraven's son, who they were all just very connected to each other. And then here's where we get the actual villain's name. He's inside of a room. It looks like he has this Spider-Man in a black suit just hanging there. It just looks like a puppet to me, but he's going up to it and just setting it on fire, and there's just a ton of spiders, and it looks like there's an actual person screaming in there. But I'm pretty sure this is, of course, supposed to be like symbolism for his hatred of Spider-Man. I don't think that's an actual person. And then we get a full page of Mary Jane's perspective of current times. So she has a teaching job at a high school teaching theater kids. She feels a passion for it. She likes the fact that they're like, you know, just kids absorbing knowledge, eager to take in her teachings. And at the moment, because of Peter being distant, them also being far apart from New York, basically where none of their friends are at, she feels basically alone. And having these kids to teach, eager to learn from her, that's basically like her life remedy. That's what keeps her going. And then we move on to Peter. He's just hanging out. He's eating alone in the cafeteria room, just sad in his thoughts. And then a coworker shows up, another teacher, and they just sit there talking, having a good time. And once she leaves, Peter has a sudden reaction, like another attack. And here in the attack, he's basically imagining himself as the same 15-year-old kid that got bitten by the spider. And here he's thinking of the spider as a being that doesn't believe he was worth having that spider power. So he's going through a lot of self-doubt emotions. He doesn't believe he even deserved to have the spider powers. And in this crazy attack that he's having, he suddenly snaps back to reality and everyone's just looking at him in the cafeteria. At this point, he just runs away and just heads home. And then we move on to later on in the day. It's raining and Peter's just staring at the window into the rain, and MJ walks in super pissed off at him like, yo, how did you just quit and run out on your job? And she's like, is there something you're not telling me? Do we need to get Dr. Kafka in here? Because she believes he needs to talk to a psychiatrist. And Dr. Kafka is like a psychiatrist that in the past has tried helping out various like villains that Spider-Man has fought, including Carnage. I believe Shriek, that was her name. It was like a character that was included in the Carnage storyline where he went around just completely annihilating New York. But there were a ton of other crazy characters that doctor tried helping out. Peter gets, he raises his voice. He's like, yo, I'm not crazy. You think I'm crazy? And MJ just, feels down because of that. He tries apologizing, but that doesn't quite help, and she just walks out of the room and leaves. At this point, we get the villain's reveal. He shoots a blow dart through the window and it starts getting smoky, and this is where we get revealed that he's the one behind Peter Parker having all these attacks, self-doubts, depressive episodes. This is driving him just crazy. And then he's basically, after this fight with MJ, he's left in the room. He's just sitting there by himself, and this is where, of course, the smoke comes in, and he's seriously considering calling Dr. Kafka. He's like, yeah, maybe she can definitely help out with my situation. But again, he's going into this attack because of the smoke, and at this point, he's just fighting this spider that's just constantly giving him self-doubt and regret from, past events. In this attack, he's pretty much getting eaten by a spider that's just constantly roasting his entire life choices. And we get one panel of MJ that's just standing outside of the building in the rain, pondering to herself. And in the attack, Peter breaks out of the spider's stomach, and he's just like, no, dude, I'm not gonna let you give me none of that self-doubt nonsense. I have a wife, a child on the way, a life. His life, he's like pulling through with his PTSD attack. He's like, nah, I'm not gonna let those dark thoughts enter my head, And this was a pretty good, Spider-Man moment. This is a good, human way of him, taking all these,
beatings mentally, to the point of depression, but he's still, fighting through it. He's not gonna let that beat him. And, of course, it's just, Kraven's homie who's just poisoning his mind. But after winning the fight with his mental spider attack, we get revealed that MJ storms back into the apartment because she doesn't want to run out on the situation, same way that her mom did when she was little. This is like a callback to MJ's character development back when we got a lot of backstory about her. But she storms in there because she wants to face the situation. She doesn't want to run away like her mom did. And she notices that the living room's a complete mess. Peter just went ham all over it, destroying it during his PTSD attack. And this is where the villain that was hanging out outside, that's trying to turn Spider-Man crazy, this is where he's just laughing his ass off because Peter Parker's just losing it mentally. But MJ does come into the room and starts comforting him. That's what I like about MJ. No matter how crazy the events that Peter deals with, she still is there for him. And that's why old school MJ is just top tier. At first I didn't like her, but once Peter married MJ in the original comic run, their relationship and their character really evolved. It was good. And this is definitely more of that good writing. That's basically how the story ends. It's a very depressing ending. Peter's really just losing it. He doesn't know whether he can really just deal with normal life anymore. And MJ's just sitting there comforting him, trying to reassure that everything is going to be okay. And the villain's just outside, laughing his ass off. It's definitely a very well written story. Pretty interesting story. I really do like it. I love everything about it. The theme, though, is hella depressing, though. It's a very good Spider-Man story. He does sort of come out at top, during his depressive episode that he was forced upon because of Kraven's homie and his loathing for Spider-Man. But him, coming out on top, that's what Spider-Man does. We still have 3 other issues because I believe this is a 4-issue kind of story. So we'll see what comes next after this. Peter Parker's definitely losing his mind. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see how he deals with this new villain here. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed me talking about Spider-Man The Lost Hunt and want me to continue talking about the story, then just make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.